Dakar. Promoting dialogue. It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world. We are live on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. As Muslims worldwide mark Eid Mubarak, Nigerian President Tinubu calls on citizens to uphold the values of Islam.
We should continue the good deed as taught by the holy month of Ramadan. Care for the vulnerable, the orphans, the less privileged, everything that we have observed.
And Burkina Faso's transitional government grants amnesty to 21 soldiers involved in a failed coup d'etat of September 2015. Reactions trail Guinean presidential pardon for Moussa Dadis Camara, convicted of crimes against humanity in 2009 massacre.
This is a decision that for us as civil party organizations came as a general surprise. It violates the dignity and honor of the victims and does not even respect the most basic principles of the proper administration of justice.
And health workers in Liberia advocate for urgent reforms in maternal health. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our holiday broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia and Liberia. We begin the bulletin in Nigeria, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has urged Muslims and all Nigerians to uphold the values of kindness, charity and selflessness practiced during the Ramadan. Speaking at the Eid Prayers Ground in Abuja, he emphasized the need to extend the spirit of compassion and community service beyond the holy month. Tinubu expressed gratitude for completing the fasting period in good health and called on citizens to continue supporting the vulnerable and less privileged and staying true to the teachings of Ramadan.
We should give thanks to Almighty Allah. We saw the beginning, we started together, and we are ending together in good health and in happiness. In prayers for our country, for all our people. We should continue the good deed as taught by the holy month of Ramadan. Care for the vulnerable, the orphans, the less privileged, everything that we have observed. We should not revert to the path that is not acceptable with the teaching of this month. That's what I pray for.
That's Nigerian President Bola Tinubu. Back here in Senegal, the Eid Mubarak holiday, commonly known as the Korité, was celebrated today by a large part of the Muslim community. During the occasion, the head of state, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who prayed at the Grand Mosque of Dakar, called for peace and national cohesion. According to the president, he remains determined to serve in humility and loyalty to meet the legitimate expectations of the Senegalese people. Here's Bassirou Diomaye Faye.
On this sacred day, I invite every citizen to cultivate a spirit of solidarity, listening, and surpassing oneself. Senegal needs all these strengths to move forward in harmony. Let us continue to build a nation of peace, fraternity, and equity. As the President of the Republic, I would like to reiterate my commitment to remaining attentive to our people and to serving with loyalty, rigor, but above all, humility, to meet the legitimate expectations of the Senegalese people. The future we build together must live up to the sacrifices and the hope of our fellow citizens.
And that's the head of the Senegal President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Still in the celebration of Eid Mubarak, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has charged young people to be change makers in the country rather than become a tool for destruction. Joining the national chief imam for the national Eid Mubarak prayers, President Mahama passionately called on Muslim communities in Boko in the north of the country to give peace a chance to reign. Here's President John Dramani Mahama.
The spirit of sacrifice, discipline and compassion you have demonstrated during the holy month of Ramadan embodies the values we all strive for in building a prosperous and just country. Today is a day of joy, thanksgiving, and renewal of faith. It also reminds us of the values that define us as a people. Faith, sacrifice, unity, and compassion are what we need. Ramadan is more than just abstaining from food and drink. It is a time for deep spiritual reflection. It is a time for self-discipline, and it is a time for kindness towards others. My brothers and sisters, let us work together guided by the principles of faith, justice, and compassion to create a brighter future for ourselves and future generations. May Allah bless our nation and guide us on the path of peace and prosperity. And on this day, I want to take the opportunity once again to call on our brothers and sisters in Boko to give peace a chance. On this holy occasion, where we celebrate the feast of Eid al-Fitr after the holy month of Ramadan, my brothers and sisters in Boko, let us give peace a chance.
And that's Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Away from matters of Eid celebration but still in Ghana, the Navy has alerted ECOWAS maritime security authorities following a suspected pirate attack on the Ghanaian registered fishing vessel Mexen 1, which left 3 crew members missing. The Ghana Navy has launched a full-scale investigation into the incident, which occurred in the country's territorial waters on Thursday, March 27, 2025. WADR's Nadide Tete reports.
According to a Ghana Navy statement, 7 armed attackers boarded the vessel around 17:53 hours on the 27th of March, firing shots and seizing crew members' mobile phones. After 3 hours, they left, only for the remaining crew to discover that the captain, chief mate, and chief engineer, all Chinese nationals, were missing, suspected to have been kidnapped. Authorities have engaged the ECOWAS Multinational Maritime Coordination Center, MMCC, Zone F in Accra, a key part of the Yaoundé architecture for maritime security, to coordinate a regional response. Intelligence agencies are actively working to locate and safely rescue the missing crew members. Meanwhile, the Ghana Navy, Marine Police, and Naval Intelligence personnel have interrogated the crew and gathered evidence from the vessel, which is now docked safely at the Tema Fishing Harbour. The Navy has vowed to intensify maritime security operations, ensuring the safety of Ghana's waters and preventing future attacks. For WADR, Nadide Tete, Accra.
Still in Ghana, the country's Vice President, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, is undergoing further medical treatment abroad after being hospitalized at the University of Ghana Medical Center, UGMC, following a sudden illness. A statement from the Presidency Communications Directorate released on Sunday, March 30, confirmed that the Vice President was admitted at the UGMC on Saturday, March 29, after experiencing an unexpected health issues the previous day. According to the statement signed by the Minister of Government Communications, Felix Kwakye-Ofosu, medical experts at the UGMC advised that she seeks specialized care outside the country to ensure full recovery. Further details regarding her conditions and travel arrangements have not been disclosed. The government has assured the public that it will provide updates as necessary. Let's get to Burkina Faso, where the transitional government has granted amnesty to 21 soldiers involved in the failed coup d'etat of September 2015. A decree signed by the head of state, Captain Ibrahim Traore, on March 24, 2025, formalized the decisions following the passage of an amnesty bill by the Transitional Legislative Assembly in December 2024. While the pardon clear legal and disciplinary sanctions, the decree states that the soldiers will not have their military careers restored or receive compensation. Echiatiso reports.
The Burkinabe government has issued a decree granting amnesty to 21 members of the armed forces convicted or prosecuted for their roles in the September 2015 coup attempt. The decision comes after the adoption of a bill on December 18, 2024, later approved by the Transitional Legislative Assembly with overwhelming support, recording 67 votes in favor out of 70. The coup, orchestrated by soldiers from the disbanded Presidential Security Regiment (RSP), saw the detention of Transitional President Michel Kafando and Prime Minister Isaac Zida under the leadership of General Gilbert Diendere. The pushes attempted to dissolve the government and establish a National Council for Democracy, but their efforts collapsed within days due to mass protests and military opposition. The RSP was subsequently dismantled and key figures, including Diendere, were arrested. Following a trial that began in 2018, Diendere was sentenced in 2019 to 20 years in prison for crimes including attacks on state security and murder, while former Foreign Minister Djibril Bazole received a 10-year sentence. Other military and civilian participants face various prison terms. The amnesty decree also lifts disciplinary sanctions imposed on the pardoned soldiers but bars them from reclaiming lost ranks or receiving compensation. While the government presents the move as a step toward national reconciliation, critics argue it undermines accountability. The decision adds another layer to Burkina Faso's complex political landscape as the country navigates ongoing security and governance challenges.
Echiatiso with that report. Away from Burkina Faso, we head to Guinea, where the pardon granted to Moussa Dadis Camara, sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes against humanity linked to the September 28, 2009 massacre, has sparked strong reactions in the country and beyond. Human Rights Watch described President Mamadou Doumbouya's decision as a shock, especially as Camara's appeal is still ongoing. The Human Rights Watch noted that victims have waited 15 years for justice for the massacre, in which over 150 people were killed and dozens raped. Camara was pardoned for health reasons and has been released from prison. However, the Human Rights Watch argues that the move may be premature under Guinean law, given the pending appeal, and calls for judicial review of the decision. Here is the spokesperson for the Guinean Human Rights Organization, Asenyi Sal.
Écoutez, c'est une décision qui pour nous est une surprise générale pour les organisations des partis civils.
This is a decision that for us as civil party organizations came as a general surprise. It violates the dignity and honor of the victims and does not even respect the most basic principles of the proper administration of justice. In this case, given that, as you know, a presidential pardon normally comes after a final decision. However, in this case, at the end of the first phase of the trial, on July 31, 2024, after the convictions, there were appeals. It would be very difficult for us to explain the motivations behind this decision. What we can see is that this is a political decision, not only one that undermines the dignity and honor of the victim, but also one that calls into question Guinea's own efforts to fight impunity and ensure the proper administration of justice. We have the impression that today the protection of human rights is no longer a priority for this group. As you know, in Africa, voices are mostly communitarian, and that it still has influence in the forest region. That could be one hypothesis, but we can't explain it. What we can see is that the young woman is undermining the efforts she herself put forward in the fight against impunity, and that's a great shame.
And that's the spokesperson for the Guinean Human Rights Organization, Asenyi Sal. Back here in Senegal, the Supreme Court has ordered the Ministry of Interior to allow Mansour Faye, the brother-in-law of former President Macky Sall, to travel freely if he wishes. Faye had been prevented on 2 separate occasions in recent weeks from leaving Senegalese territory, despite not being officially subject to any legal proceedings, according to his lawyers. He was cited in a case currently before the court, but no formal charges have been brought against him. More in this report by Imo Edit.
Mansour Faye took his case to the Administrative Chamber of the Supreme Court after authorities blocked his travel twice. The first incident occurred on March 10 when he was preparing to travel to Saudi Arabia. On that occasion, he was prevented from boarding his flight without being given a clear explanation. The second time, he was attempting to travel to Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, when he was informed that he was subject to a travel ban issued by a high authority. Once again, no further details were provided regarding the reasons behind this restriction. Challenging what he considered to be a violation of his rights to free movement, Faye took legal action. Last Friday, the Supreme Court ruled in his favor, siding with his argument that the restrictions imposed on him were unlawful. The court issued a decision ordering the Ministry of the Interior to lift the restrictions and allow him to travel freely. However, according to a report from the Senegalese press, the state has since filed an appeal seeking to uphold the travel ban. In recent weeks, several close allies of former President Macky Sall have claimed to be victims of political persecution. They argue that they are being unfairly targeted by the new administration, which has launched an extensive review of the financial dealings and governance of the previous regime. Since taking office, the new government has prioritized an accountability process aimed at scrutinizing the actions of former officials. Many of those who were close to Macky Sall believe this initiative has turned into a politically motivated campaign against them.
Imo Edit with that report. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. And around the world, we are live on wadr.org. We are also live on all social media platforms on Facebook, WADR English Service, and on YouTube, WADR News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. As Muslims worldwide mark Eid Mubarak, Nigerian President Tinubu calls on citizens to uphold the values of Islam. Burkina Faso's transitional government grants amnesty to 21 soldiers involved in a failed coup d'etat of September 2015. Reactions trail Guinean presidential pardon as Moussa Dadis Camara convicted of crimes against humanity in 2009 massacre. Still ahead in the news, health workers in Liberia advocate for urgent reforms in maternal health oversight. We do have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's get to the Sahel, particularly in Niger, where the country has officially withdrawn from the Multinational Joint Task Force, MNJTF, a regional coalition formed to combat Boko Haram, and has renamed its military operation in the Jifa region Naliwa Dole. The move seeks the country's shift towards autonomous security management, as announced by the state broadcaster Tele Sahel. The withdrawal comes amid growing dissatisfaction with the MNJTF's effectiveness, with Chad previously criticizing the force for lack of coordination and considering its own exit. Niger's government argues that relying on its own forces will improve the national security and better protect strategic infrastructure. Despite steps away from the coalition, Niger's military insists that the security situation remains stable and under control. The country is also engaging in diplomatic talks with the regional partners, particularly Nigeria, to strengthen cross-border security cooperation. Let's get to Liberia, where maternal health advocates are calling for a comprehensive clinical audit of hospitals with a specific focus on maternity and surgical services. The call comes amid growing concerns about gaps in maternal health, highlighting the urgent need for system-wide reforms to improve patient safety and care quality. WADR's Brown Parker reports.
Liberia's maternal health system faces scrutiny over gaps in maternity and surgical services. Maternal health advocate George Kilepo, executive director of the Public Health Initiative Liberia, is calling for a comprehensive comprehensive clinical audit of hospitals to improve care standards. Her call follows a distressing incident involving a federal nurse, highlighting the need for systemic reforms. She criticizes the current system for focusing only on maternal deaths, neglecting complications leading up to them. To close this gap, Kirikpo advocates for routine reporting from hospitals and clinics to track near-miss cases and identify risks. The civil society organization group also pushes for patient safety protocols and maternity care, ensuring clear guidelines for inductions and post-operative care areas where standards often fall short.
I think there's a need for legal and policy reforms around these things so as to enhance the patient rights. But I think the patient themselves can sue these doctors and the hospitals.
The closing, while the Liberia Medical Dental Council has taken disciplinary actions against the doctors and critical incidents, Kirikpo insists that broader legal and policy reforms are needed to strengthen patient rights. The COS group remains committed to these changes, stressing that systemic reform is essential to improving maternal health care and patient safety in Liberia. For Newslink on WADR, this is Abraham Parker reporting from Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Usma Umar from Nigeria for the press review.
We'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper. And Daily Trust is leading with this story, which is a developing story from Edo State, South Nigeria. Uromi killings. Families seek justice. Share victims' last moments. Of course, this story has been trending about 16 travelers who were traveling from Port Harcourt back to their various states in northern Nigeria for the Eid al-Fitr Salah celebration, but were unfortunately misidentified by a group of vigilantes in Edo State, in Uromi to be specific. Were gruesomely murdered in public glare, and this has been leading to ripples. Of course, governors, civil society groups, individuals have been making calls for justice to prevail in the matter. We have also seen video clips of the last moments of some of these hunters, because that's who they were identified as. They were local hunters who were coming back to northern Nigeria after spending some months in the south region of Nigeria before they met that gruesome fate. The president had directed the security agencies to, of course, fish out the perpetrators. The governor of the state has also taken some measures, including suspension of the retired police officer who is the head of the vigilante group, and an order for the perpetrators to be fished out. About 14 people were said to have been arrested so far in connection to the gruesome murder. It's actually a very trending story in all newspapers for today. We quickly move to the Matrix newspaper, which has this story. House of Representatives members recover additional 21.4 billion naira owed federal government by 4 oil firms. And there is this foreign story. Russia-Ukraine ceasefire deal. Angry Trump talks tough. Lambast Putin with the rider, threatens 25 to 50% tariff on Russian oil if deal fails. And the last rider there says he was not joking over third term bid. And another story here. Tinubu reveals why he threatened to remove Wike as FCT minister. And another story says Aisha Achumugu speaks from hiding, says my business practices respect Nigerian laws. And this is the much we have for you on this edition of the press review as I hand you back to the studios.
Thank you very much, Usma Umar, for the press review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon takes us to Guinea, where the presidential pardon granted to Musa Dadis Camara, sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes against humanity linked to the September 28, 2009 massacre, has sparked strong reactions from the country and beyond. Human Rights Watch described President Mamadou Doumbouya's decision as a shock, especially as Camara's appeal is still ongoing. Our guest is the spokesperson for the Guinean Human Rights Organization, Senegal.
Écoutez, c'est une décision qui pour nous a été une surprise générale pour les organisations des partis civils.
This is a decision that for us as civil party organizations came as a general surprise. It violates the dignity and honor of the victims and does not even respect the most basic principles of the proper administration of justice. In this case, given that, as you know, a presidential pardon normally comes after a final decision. However, in this case, at the end of the first phase of the trial, on July 31, 2024, after the convictions, there were appeals.
D'ailleurs, qui intervient 48 heures après un décret qui parlait d'indemnisation pour les victimes.
In the presidential pardon granted to Captain Musa Dadis Camara, some see it as a decision to gain the sympathy of the Forest Guinea, a region blessed with the Dadis Camara genetic, which is nevertheless a major electoral stronghold while presidential ambitions are attributed to General Mamadou Diomboya. What do you think about it?
Il serait très difficile pour nous d'expliquer les motivations qui sont derrière ça.
It would be very difficult for us to explain the motivations behind this decision. What we can see is that this is a political decision, not only one that undermines the dignity and honor of the victim, but also one that calls into question Guinea's own efforts to fight impunity and ensure the proper administration of justice. We have the impression that today the protection of human rights is no longer a priority for this group. As you know, in Africa, voices are mostly communitarian, and that it still has influence in the forest region. That could be one hypothesis, but we can't explain it. What we can see is that the young woman is undermining the efforts she herself put forward in the fight against impunity, and that's a great shame.
Dans le cadre de la lutte contre l'impunité, et c'est très dommage.
Are you concerned that the presidential pardon decision will extend to other convicts in the trial of the September 28, 2009 massacre, who were the main defendants, including the former aide-de-camp of Captain Musa Dadis Camara, Commander Aboubakar Jakite, alias Tumba Jakite?
Aujourd'hui, je pense qu'il ne faut pas exclure cette hypothèse. Si les gens ne sont plus
Today, I think we shouldn't rule out this possibility. If people are no longer committed to delivering justice, Dadis is the main accused in this case. He was the president of the republic. How can you pardon Dadis when he has been convicted and leave the others to you? How can we hold a trial without Dadis in this case? Can you imagine the problems that would create for the rest of the legal proceedings? We wonder how this trial can continue now. We still hope that the International Criminal Court, as you recall, on the day the trial opened, September 28, 2022, announced the closure of the initial investigations it had opened.
And that's the spokesperson for the Guinean human rights organization, Asenyesal. And in sports this afternoon, a tragic incident occurred at the Bokum Boxing Arena in Accra, Ghana on Saturday night during a Bell 7-star professional boxing league when Nigerian boxer Gabriel Alu-Washugun collapsed in the ring while facing off 22-year-old Ghanaian contender Jonathan Mbanugu. Despite immediate medical assistance, Gabriel was taken to the hospital when he unfortunately succumbed to his condition. A heartbreaking event has shaken the boxing world as Gabriel Olusegun, a light heavyweight boxer from Nigeria, collapsed in the ring during a professional match in Accra. He was later declared dead at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital in the early hours of Sunday, March 30, 2025. And that's how we end today's edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umu Danyugo for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship health program, Well Body. I am Christopher Ticho. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink.